This is my 11th season covering Michigan football, and it's my 10th fall camp, kind of. Maybe 9th if you include 2020 not really being there, of course. But with that, this is the most drama-free, despite there being so many question marks. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of it all right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Lowell, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you so much to all of you who listen every single day, our everydayers. And we do appreciate you for making us your first listen. I just got back we had 4 press conferences in Ann Arbor this week. And I think like one of my biggest takeaways is kind of like, this is relatively boring. And I can talk football all day. So we're going to get into that. Why is it boring? Why is it drama free? We're going to get to that first. Then we're going to get to a couple little tidbits here that I gleaned from today that could have an impact on the season. And then we're going to finish off. I'm going to give you my full projected depth chart for the season opener, subject to change, and also subject to change for week 2. But we will start off with it's been kind of a boring fall camp, which is kind of bizarre because there's a lot of positions that are not settled. Give credit to my friend Steve Dace, who I spoke with a little bit this morning, and he had said, that's a good thing. That's what you want this time of year. He's not wrong. But at the same time, it's interesting for a team that went 8-5. Like, in some ways, I think it's because we have to see it. Like, I know there's intrigue behind certain things. There's intrigue behind Bryce Underwood, but we've talked about Bryce Underwood ad nauseum at this point. We need to see it in a real game, not a spring game, not a split squad. We need to see him in a real game. But even with that, it's like as much as they try, like you ask any coach or any player, like, what do you see out of Bryce Underwood? The answer almost every time is, oh man, they're all doing good. Let's talk about Jaden Davis. And you're like, I asked about Bryce Underwood. I get it. It's a team directive, most likely. If it's not a team directive, it's still like it's still a smart play. It's a good move, right? Like, make him earn all of the accolades. Keep, I think that's important. It doesn't matter whether we know. That's one of the things that people get very irked. Like, you even see it on the boards. I had someone come at me for not sharing what I knew about Connor stuff. And it's like, it's not important that as much as it as that the right things happen in the process of things. Okay. So it doesn't matter that much that we know. But you've got Bryce Underwood battling for the quarterback spot. You've got unsettled left tackle and right guard positions. The receiving position is outside of Donovan McCulley is kind of a big YOLO. And then you get to defensively. We don't know. We know who the 6 players are going to be that are rotating at defensive tackle. We don't know who's actually going to be the start. You assume Rayshon Benny will be one of the 2. I think defensive end, linebacker are set with their starters. Safety is kind of unsettled, but you feel comfortable about the players that'll be coming out and getting their opportunity. And cornerback, you think the starters, but the question is more the depth. So it's kind of a weird thing, right? Because like I just mentioned a couple different positions that have not been solidified. Quarterback, and safety and defensive tackle. Like, we don't technically know who the starters are. Like, it's going to be Bryce Underwood as the starter, barring some incredible change of something or injury. But at the same time, like, you're like, okay, it's going to be Bryce. Whether it's, Rod Moore, TJ Metcalf, Rod Moore, Brandon Hillman, Mason Curtis, any combination, you could even throw in Jaden Mangum into that mix, or, maybe Jacob Oden. That might be a little bit more of we're not sure. But, like you feel comfortable about what they're going to trot out safety wise. You feel comfortable about the 6-man rotation at defensive tackle. If Cam Brandt and Jimmy Rolder end up being out there on the first snap instead of, say, Derek Moore or Jayshon Barham, then, okay, you still feel good. Which I heard Jayshon Barham's voice for the first time today. It's alarming. Just FYI, it wasn't in a press conference scenario. Anyway, I love him so much. I just do. He's my favorite player for no reason at all. I can't tell you. I digress. It's just weird because it's the most drama-free out of the 11 years. Because every year there was just more intrigue. Now, some of that might be due to internal expectations versus external. When I say internal, I'm kind of including the regional media, the local regional media, compared to what like the extra regional or national media think of Michigan, right? Like they're flying under the radar a little bit. Like even though you've got some people like you had, Matt Berry, kind of gave, a path to Michigan being better. And, our friends over at Crane and Company on the Daily Wire, they basically have Michigan going 10-2. There are people who are looking at it and not just saying like, well, they were at 8-5 last year, and you look at the fact that they lost Alex Orji, and that tells you everything you need to know. I'm looking at a 3-9 season. That type of analysis, I'm not including that, but I think that you can see, like a lot of people can look at it either with pessimistic eyes and say, what does it really matter? But otherwise, I think that it's also like, we don't know who's going to be out there at any given snap, but you feel fine about most of it. This is a good time for a little quick PSA to my friends over at the Fort. Stop complaining about people questioning the wide receiver room. We do that here. Like the mods over at the Fort are doing the same. Like it's an unproven entity. Yeah, Donovan McCulley had a really good. It's funny because people will say, well, Donovan McCulley was, all Big Ten honorable mention 2 years ago. He had he had the yards and everything. And in the same breath, when you mention Anthony Simpson, those same people will be like, I don't want to hear about no UMass guy. It's okay, but like, just stop complaining about it. Doesn't really matter if Cover 3 podcast is questioning the wide receivers. We're questioning the wide receivers because that's one of the unsettled positions where there's not as much like data that tells you like, yeah, that's going to be good. Spring game didn't necessarily make you feel a lot better because you saw Donovan McCulley go out for one snap, get one catch, really good, and then done. But like, what did Samaj Morgan do? What did Fred Moore do? Because those are the guys that keep on getting mentioned. So that makes you, and if you aren't feeling burned last year by, the Kirk Campbell, like we're going to be so explosive. We're going to open up the playbook. Like, we might be better offensively this year than we were last year. If you weren't burned by that, then I don't know, maybe you weren't paying attention. I don't know. But, just understand they're not really coming against you. That's a legitimate question. There's been multiple threads over there, but anyway, like, that's it for me. That's the only like real big question. Now, will more questions arise? That's certainly possible. Last year, I was like, well, yeah, the defense is going to be like top 3, and it wasn't. Right? It took a lot. They were great on first and second down, and third down was a debacle for the first 2/3 of the year. Like things look different against Texas if that's a 3 and out to start. Right? They shut them down 1, shut them down 2, and then let them get third down. Happens a couple times that drive. Happens a couple times throughout that game. Happened throughout the year. That kind of changed a little bit of the calculus. So with that, like, yeah, we will recalibrate when we actually go into the season. But like, as far as where I feel confident, it's like 90% of the team, no matter who's there. And I understand people will look at it and say, well, that's how you are. I'm like, no, I don't have the questions because we know the players. We've seen those guys have big plays. Will they be consistent enough? That's the question. Usually players get better, but like Makari Page had kind of a down year until he switched to nickel last year. So, like that's when we start to have questions, when it's like, wait, why is that guy not as good as we saw him be? Right? Is Mason Curtis suddenly not as good as we thought he was going to be, then we're going to have questions. But generally, I think like this is a team where it's like, I don't have a lot. It doesn't mean we don't have to see a lot. We have to see the quarterback, offensive line, wide receiver battery work. It's no guarantee that it will. But generally, I feel like, yeah, they're going to be able to run the ball. The pass game will be better. I feel like the defense will, even with the subtractions, be as good, if not better than last year. Because there's good reasons to suggest that will all be the case. So it's just a bizarre thing coming out of now a week full of fall camp press conferences. All right. There were a couple little tidbits that were dropped that make me question some things, though, right? Like I said, like things can change quickly. And I do have some questions because there were two different things that got mentioned on during today's press conference that make me think, okay, this might be a place to recalibrate. So let's get to those things here in just a moment. But before we do, summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel? Well, guess what? New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, there were a couple things coming out of today's press conference that I thought, hey, Clayton Safey and I, we're like, man, did we hear what we think we hear? Okay, we're on the same page. Now, don't take this as gospel because this is just what was said, and I'm not actually reading the actual quotes here. But I'm starting to kind of doubt that we will see Rod Moore week 1, snap 1. Case in point. Question asked to TJ Metcalf. What have you seen from Rod Moore? And he's like, man, that highlight tape is great. Not like, oh, he's moving out there. That highlight tape was great. Like I've seen the package of highlights on video. Someone else, maybe it was TJ still, but someone else said something about like you're seeing him running. Like he's out there running. Not out there making plays, out there running. And that's a read between the lines thing. Now, again, don't take it as gospel because it very well could just be we're mincing the little pieces here and saying, but that caught my attention and it caught Clayton's attention. So any complaints, direct them to ClaytonSafey@gmail. I don't know if that's his email address. So don't do that. But, that's interesting. The same thing can be said of Mikey Keene because, again, TJ Metcalf, it was more than just him. There was a couple of the guys that had kind of intimated these things. But unfortunately, we're making TJ the centerpiece of this information drop. I was trying to think of what is it called in Call of Duty when they drop the bundle. I can't remember what that's called right now. Gamers, you'll scream it at your car stereo or at your TV screen. I won't get it, but still, the payload. It's not the payload, but you know what I'm saying. But I think the Mikey Keene was the other one because it was asked what's the difference when you're facing Bryce Underwood versus Mikey Keene, or do you see the maturity of Mikey Keene show up? And it's like, well, I haven't really gone up against him. It's just been, and he might be out there. I think that might not preclude him from being out there. It just means he's not necessarily running with the ones because he's getting back in rehab, and there's still a couple weeks left in fall camp. But he's saying he's like, oh, I'm going up against Bryce, Jake, and Jaden Davis. So kind of doesn't sound like those two guys are necessarily as active as you would hope they would be at this part of the year. Now, same thing for both of them. Like I just said, this has been 1.5 weeks of fall camp. It started last week Wednesday, so it's a week and 2 days, not even a week and a half. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could be just like working them in slowly, and then eventually they're going to get their opportunity, and then we could. But I do think it's notable, and I think it's worth paying attention to. Now, the good news is Mikey Keene was not expected to start after everything that happened in the spring, right? Like that was a recalibration on this show's end, and certainly I might have been behind the 8 ball there. But, Rod Moore, for as much as people are penciling him in, yeah, it might take a few weeks, which is fine. What happened in 2023, and it took him a little while. We didn't see him until Nebraska, week 5. That was week 5. Like, I think he got in week 4, but like he didn't really start. You didn't start see Rod out there a lot until week 5 in 2023. That could be the case, right? Like, don't put him out there before he's ready and let him get acclimated and all that stuff. Mikey Keene, right? Like the big thing that would suck about that is that you wanted Mikey Keene to push Bryce as much as possible, but that's where at least maybe Jake Garcia can really help here. Even though Jake Garcia lost his job to Kattenhauser, former MSU also ran. I think it was him. Was it Hauser or Noah Kim? Ended up over at East Carolina. Ends up stealing his job away from him. Not great, but he is a former 4-star. They like what they've seen from him. At least there's someone pushing him that has game experience. So this isn't a dig on Jaden Davis. It's just having someone push him that has been around college football for some time and has game experience. So that's good. But yeah, definitely not ideal still, but like it's fine. Everybody stay calm. Goose Brava. All right, let's finish off with I'm going to run through who I think is going to start in week 1 against New Mexico. Offense, defense, as usual, we're going to pretend special teams doesn't exist, but in large part, it's not because of disinterest as much as, it's Dominic Savada, it's probably Hudson Hollenbeck, and we also don't really know who the returners are going to be because they don't really ever, they just list off, we haven't asked this so far this year, but they just list off like 20 guys, and okay, not really worth it to figure out who the gunner is going to be. All right, we're going to continue on with the depth chart, or not the depth chart, but the projected starting lineup here in a moment. All right, if you're watching, I am wearing a personally designed Ayrton Senna shirt with the Monday GP logo. Check out our site, my new site, my F1 site, which I haven't written on in a week because fall camp and some life stuff, good life stuff, but has been a little bit draining, and we're in summer break, so it's fine. It's fine. It's okay. But we'll pick up the F1 stuff for those who like it. You can follow along with my neurodivergent obsessions. You do that here on the show. You can do it outside of the show too. And get real fun about a year from now if I get to have my way and I start to renovate do a resto mod of a 1965 Ford Mustang. That'll be a whole different deal. Anyway, all right. Projected starting lineup. Figure like, okay, we're a little bit into fall camp. Like I said, I don't have a lot of questions. Am I going to be 100% right? Probably not. There will be some different things here. But let's go through it. Starting quarterback, Bryce Underwood. I mean, I'll eat a hat. I really won't, but like, figuratively, I will eat a hat. You can get a mental image of what it would look like if I ate a hat if he doesn't start. Yeah, Bryce Underwood, clearly. Running back is a little bit more murky because we kind of covered yesterday, it doesn't really matter who starts. It's really very much a Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins in 2021 type of deal, right? Like one guy might start, the other guy might star. So it doesn't really matter, but I'll go with Justice Haynes because I think like with the 1A, 1B, he might just be a smidge better. When I say a smidge, I'm talking, it's that exact deal. Like he might start and Marshall might have a better game, and vice versa throughout the year. Offensive line is where we do have a couple battles. So here's some guesswork. I'm going to stay with Evan Link as the left tackle. I think it's going to be hard for him to keep that position, but I think experience, know-how, and all of that's going to end up winning out. Now, I do think Andrew Babalola is pushing him about as far as it can go, but kind of like 2016, I know it's a different staff entirely, 0 remaining holdovers on the coaching staff, but from early Harbaugh at this point. But much like how Ben Bredesen was battling Grant Newsome for the left tackle position all through fall camp, kind of started feeling like Ben was going to win out, and then Grant Newsome ended up winning. Then he gets injured, and then they change things around, and it's Ben Braden ends up starting, and they push Ben Bredesen inside. So I think it's going to be Evan Link, Giovanni El-Hadi, Greg Crippen. Right guard, that's a big YOLO. I'm going to stay with Nate Afobe. Very talented, but he's less experienced than Lawrence Attar and Brady Norton. So take that one for a grain of salt. And you also have Jake Warnera, who's battling there, but I'm going to stick with Nate Afobe for now. And then right tackle is Andrew Sprague. Tight end, it would be Marlon Klein. Fullback / tight end, it would be Max Bredesen. And then we have wide receiver Donovan McCulley. I have slotted as the main starter, the main X. I would have said Anthony Simpson last week as the slot, but with all of the talk of Samaj Morgan this week, I'm going to go with Samaj. I think it's tenuous though. And then I'll stay with Fred Moore as the Z, but at the same time, I think he's probably being pushed by a couple different guys. And, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see any combination of those guys, like whether it's a Kendrick Bell or, moving Anthony Simpson to the outside, Andrew Marsh, Jamar Browder, Channing Goodwin, it could be any number of players, Peyton O'Leary. So that's my starting offense. My starting defense, the edges. The main edges are Derek Moore and TJ Guy. They consider Cam Brandt a third starter. You'll see plenty of Dom Nichols as well. I'm just interested to see if we start seeing some Lugard Apayi or Devin Baxter, so on and so forth. Interiors where it's more murky, we're going to go with Rayshon Benny as the starting DT. I'm not differentiating between DT, NT, any of that stuff, but 3 tech, 5 tech. I'm not knowledgeable enough to sit and do that. I have too many other things to worry about. But I will go with him as essentially your DT 3/5 tech, and I will go with Trey Williams as the starting nose type. Now, it's going to depend on package and all of that stuff. We saw some 3 defensive tackle lineups in the spring game, but again, it was split squad. They weren't necessarily running exactly the same things we're necessarily going to see in game. Some version of it, but not necessarily exactly that. So that would be my starter, but it doesn't matter because at any point in time, you can see any of the other 4 guys, Trey Pierce, Damon Payne, Eno Etta, Ikawana, and I wouldn't be surprised if we end up starting to see some David Pale. It's just the room is just so big at this point. It's hard to really understand or know exactly who you're going to see. Linebackers, if you're going with 2, it's Ernest Hausman and Jay Sean Barham. If you're going with 3, it's Jimmy Rolder. You're going to see plenty of Cole Sullivan this year as well. And don't count out either Jaden Hood when he's healthy or Troy Bowles. Then you get back to safety. Because of what we said in segment 2, going to recalibrate me a little bit. I'm going to go with Brandon Hillman and Mason Curtis as your starting safeties. And guess that either we'll see Rod Moore come in via rotation or we won't see him at all until week 2 or 4. That's going to be what I'm going to guess here. So I still think that you'll see guys come in rotation. Wouldn't be surprised if we see some Jacob Oden. I haven't heard anything about him. I just think it's kind of his time. But, you know, also I think that, I mean, there's other guys like Jaden Mangum. We heard some good stuff from Zeke Berry about Jaden Mangum. And I think that he very well could get in as well. And one or the other Metcalf brothers, but I think you're going to see both for sure. But I have TJ Metcalf as the starting nickel. So I think that's where you're going to see him. And then that just leaves the boundaries. It's Zeke Hill and Jair Hill. Zeke Berry and Jair Hill. Who's Zeke Hill? Somebody tell me. I don't know, but he's starting. Zeke Berry's behind him. I'm going to go with the misspeak, and that's where we're at. But Zeke Berry, Jair Hill, and then rotating Josiah Edmond, who had some really positive mentions from both TJ Metcalf, apparently, and Zeke Berry. He had 2 pick sixes so far in fall camp. Good news for him, bad news for whoever the quarterback was. You hope it wasn't Bryce. So that's it. That's to me the projected starting lineup. Thought that was a worthwhile exercise, and you know, maybe next mailbag people won't ask me, but I'm sure they'll be like, "Who's the starting quarterback?" Because it happens almost every mailbag. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for tuning in on this Friday show. We will talk to you. We're just not going to pretend like there's going to be a weekend show. So we'll just see you Monday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you then soon. Peace.